Why'd you put your middle name in the recording?
I don't know.
She used to report with her middle name. Before I met her, it would be like Dianna Marie Russini reported.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever
You're right.
TV station. I used to be like, who the fuck is this?
Scoop City is brought to you by Thursday Night Football on Prime Video. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm the athletic senior NFL insider, Dianna and Russini.
And I'm Chase Daniel, played football in the NFL for 14 years.
Hurry up, Christmas is tomorrow.
No,
Christmas is good. It's how it feels.
This is barely the beginning of December.
That late Thanksgiving thing is throwing me off. I mean, you look at the calendar, this Christmas is 3 weeks away. This thing is coming, right?
I know. I need to get on my shopping list because usually I'm more on it, but Thanksgiving late definitely threw me for a fast one.
Yeah, well, week 13's all wrapped up here. Answer these yes or no. Ready? Christmas is the best holiday. Yes or no?
Yes.
The Ravens have a Justin Tucker problem. Yes or no?
Yes.
The Falcons have a Kirk Cousins problem. Yes or no?
No.
Ooh, I thought you were going to say yes. I was hoping for 3 yeses there. We've got so much to get to here on Scoop City. The athletic senior writer Mike Silver joins the show to talk to us about what's going on with the San Francisco 49ers, weird vibes, what the problems are, and really what the future is going to look like for this team that seems to have really lost a lot of hope. And it's been a season-long slide, plus all the injuries. It's been a tough one. Plus, Silver's also going to talk to us about his visit with Jared Goff in Detroit and what the Lions vibes are like, and really how Jared Goff has figured out his path here and come up on top. As we know, the Detroit Lions here are certainly one of the best teams in football right now. We're also going to get to our Uncrustables segment where we pick things we love and hate about the NFL and a little bit of life, because we've always got some issues going on.
Life.
Right, but first, let's get right to this thing. Here is what I'm hearing around the league. All right, Chase, the Chicago Bears are on a search for a new head coach. Ryan Poles, the general manager, will return next season, and he, along with President Kevin Warren, are going to sort of be a tandem here in their search for who the next head coach will be now that Matt Eberflus was fired on Friday. And I know I sent you some stories that we did over the weekend about how this thing all ended. I don't really think any of it was that surprising. You know, I know here on this show, we've talked about the future of Matt Eberflus. And, you know, Chase, you made such a good point on Friday morning when we talked about some of Eberflus's decision-making. I saw you on Fox talking about how there were a lot of games that they were really close to really flipping their way. And if those things happen, Matt Eberflus is not fired, right? Like, we're not here talking about a new head coach, a firing in season, the first time in the history of the Chicago Bears.
Let's say that again, because I want to make sure our audience understands just how big of a deal this is.
The Chicago Bears have never fired a head coach in season. Ever.
What?
And I can tell you, they didn't want to do this. This was a conversation that went on for hours because there was some resistance. While it may feel, because of the decision-making we saw on Thanksgiving from Eberflus, and you know, we talked about the 32 seconds and him not calling a timeout. Everyone knows the story by now. And the story that Adam Johns and I reported on was what the locker room atmosphere was after that game, because I can tell you in the living room where I was watching the game, everyone was screaming and yelling, and there's no Bears fans around us. They were going like, what are you doing? I think the entire country watching that game yelled the same thing. What are you doing? Call a timeout, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
So that locker room, Chase, I had a player say to me in all my years of doing this, I have never been in a locker room like this.
Why?
I've never seen or heard the anger and emotion. So Matt Eberflus spoke to the room the way he always does. No different message, no new tone, no accountability, just kind of did his typical post-game, let's stick together mantra that he was doing. That I'm sure you've heard versions of it 100 times from the coaches that you've played for over the years. And the players were looking at one another going, Are you kidding me right now?
This is not just like any other loss. Yeah.
This is not just we need to stick together. So Jalen Johnson, a team captain, just went off yelling and screaming back at his coach. And the emotions were high and everyone was frustrated. And when I was talking to some people who witnessed it, who were in the room, who were part of it, a lot of this had to do with the fact that this was a buildup of anger and disappointment. This wasn't just a reaction to a coach mistake. This all went back to the Commanders game. The Hail Mary.
Hail Mary. The play before the Hail Mary, really.
The play before, exactly. The play before the Hail Mary. But Chase, it was the fact that Eberflus didn't take any accountability the week of that. These players wanted to hear him admit he failed. And they never got that. They said, the guys I was talking to told me they never heard it from him. He never owned it. And then when he did start owning things, it was so far the other way, it felt disingenuous and insincere. So this all combined resulted in a decision this organization had to make. They had to make it.
Why did they make him do media? Two separate media hits before they fired him? Because that like, for people that like don't understand, like Eberflus recruited me in high school to the University of Missouri. I was with Eberflus for 4 years at the University of Missouri. He was the defensive coordinator. So I don't understand why they did that to him. Can you tell me why?
I don't necessarily think it was a do it to him thing. It was they hadn't made a real decision yet, according to people I talked to in the building. They were still meeting about what they wanted to do next.
Yeah.
And because the decision wasn't made, they didn't want to move the press conference to a different time because we all know what's the sure sign there's a problem. You move the press conference time, and then there's all this waiting and build up to what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Ted Cruz from the Kansas City Chiefs was hired to the Chicago Bears to help Kevin Warren with this operation and improve communication. And they admitted on Monday that they could have handled this better. So credit to Kevin Warren saying, like, look, this, yes, we probably could have done something better. So, yeah, look, what a great lesson for teams, though, right? Like just be smart.
Do it. Like, how yeah, I mean, look, that's neither here nor there. A couple thoughts on the firing. One, you know, when I hear the stories from you and some people about the accountability issues, that's the number one thing for a head coach. Like, take accountability for your actions and what caused this situation. And I've heard not only from you, but from a couple different people, it was a buildup, right, of certain things. And when I look at the games they've lost, Dianna, like they could very easily be 7-4, 8-4 right now, because you look at the Hail Mary game against the Washington Commanders. Like, I agree. And I went on air live on national TV, and I've said it on here. Like, that was ridiculous, the play before the Hail Mary. That should have never happened, right? That was a mistake. He should have taken full accountability. But it's a crazy fluke Hail Mary. Those don't happen very often. And then you look at the Green Bay game, you get your game-winning field goal blocked. And then you go to the Minnesota Vikings game where they take it to OT on a really, really good 10-2 Vikings team. And then they are down 16-0, I believe, in the first half against the Lions, come all the way back. They're in field goal range. And the whole, like, stuff. It's just crazy how it's a game of inches in the NFL. And it's, in my opinion, it's one of the most coveted openings in all of the NFL, just purely based on the defense they have and obviously the way Caleb Williams has been playing the last couple games. Yeah,
but coaches that are taking a look right now at all these openings and the potential openings that are expected to be, 9, 10, maybe even 11 if they went real nuts here, they're taking a look at not just the quarterback here. You're looking at ownership, you're looking at the front office, you're looking at Ryan Poles, whose job is safe for next year. You're looking at Kevin Warren. You're right. There are a lot of things that you can put on, let's just say, a whiteboard of the advantages of to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears, starting with Caleb Williams, starting to the $80 million plus in cap space, to this new stadium that is expected to be state of the art. So many the history. There's so many. It's Chicago. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. I get it.
I love Chicago,
but coaches that are going to have options are going to want to make sure that they're going to be working for people who understand what they want, and it has to be clear. So I think this...
Interesting you said that, because my question to you was going to be, so Kevin Warren obviously came out, said they're going to be working in tandem with Ryan Poles, and Ryan Poles will have his full support. Who do you think's really running that search, though? Like, do you think Kevin Warren is almost too involved for a team president, for someone that would be wanting a job like this?
Kevin Warren took this job because he was getting all of this power. They want him to have the power. So while I think Ryan Poles is certainly going to have an opinion and he's going to be able to share his thoughts about this next hire, I think Kevin Warren will have the strongest hand in all of this.
Do you think that Thomas Brown gets any consideration for what he's done with Caleb Williams?
I do. I think they're going to consider it, but unfortunately, sometimes it's as superficial as this person was associated with the former regime.
So Caleb Williams is going to have 3 OCs in a year.
It stinks, but that may be the reality.
The Bears are stuck in this cycle, dude. Like, what are we doing?
Look, we can bring Kevin Fishbane back on
come
and
on,
go
Kevin.
through it again, since he was a phenomenal star of our show going through the history of the Chicago Bears. Look, we saw it with Baker Mayfield, right? Like, we've seen it time and time again where these quarterbacks just are getting so much inconsistency, it's almost impossible for them to succeed. And now it appears that Thomas Brown is doing a really good job. In fact, when I saw that they named him interim, my thought was, put someone else in the head coach job. Caleb and him have something good here.
Yeah.
Why are we messing with this? Because we've seen in the past where certain units fail when they lose their coordinator, whether it's to it. Like, look at the Jets, right? Like, look how bad their defense turned out.
Has gone downhill.
Yeah, correct. So you don't have that same coach overseeing everything, making sure those small details are there. But in terms of the Chicago Bears for what's next here, because the search is going to be very thorough here, and they have lots of choices of people they want. They say they want what you know is my favorite phrase in football: a leader of men.
Yeah, you didn't like when I said that the other
That
day.
is the dumbest phrase in football. A leader, define it. What are you looking for specifics? Like, give me the specifics of what you want in a head coach. People will send me photos or gifs of like Dan Campbell and Mike Tomlin. Okay, there are specific characteristics about these men that make them leader of men. So what is it? And that's what I really want to hear from the Chicago Bears organization. What is it? What qualities? Why are you so mad? Because I ask you this all the time.
It's funny. You ask me all the time, and I gave you complete awesome answers, and you didn't love it. You know the person, though, that I want to see become the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, and I think would just completely turn that building upside down, would have the power. Now, he would have to hire a very, very out-of-this-park home run hire for OC, but Mike Vrabel. I think he would come in and absolutely be the person that they need and love. And I know people are saying, we're not going defense again. But if there's another OC out there that you like, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I say I wouldn't be surprised. Who knows? They're probably going offense. But that to me is like, a lot of people aren't really talking about him for this job, but I think he'd be a good fit.
Well, you talk about the leader of the men, right? So what about Mike Vrabel says leader of men to you?
Everything.
No one will answer my question. I actually agree with you in terms of like culture change and somebody who's going to hold people accountable, someone who's going to hold their best players accountable, all the things that I know from covering him too in Tennessee of what he was like. And when you talk to his players he's kind of like that teacher that you had in school that was really tough in the classroom, but you always looked back later in life like, man, they were right. Yeah. They were doing it the right way.
Yeah, that's actually a very good comparison.
Right. So I like that you brought up the offensive coordinator element to this, though, because I think initially you go, no. Caleb needs an offensive head coach. No, No, look at all the teams around the league right now that have success. Most of their head coaches are A, not calling plays, and B, aren't one side of the ball at this point anymore. They're CEOs, and Mike Vrabel would make a great CEO. I
Mike
think
Tomlin, Dan Campbell, name 2 of those guys.
right? They don't call plays.
Nope.
Nope. Leader of men. So we will see. We'll see how this thing pans out and what they decide to do, and really how much Caleb Williams is going to have a say in this. That's what I'm interested to see if they're going to let their quarterback.
I doubt it.
Oh,
He's
you
a
said,
rookie.
yeah, I probably doubt it. Yeah. Okay, so one of my favorite things to fight about right now, because I'm seeing it everywhere. Everyone's like, the Eagles are the best team in the NFL. No, the Lions are the best team in the NFL. We're going to have Mike Silver talk Lions with us coming up in just a few minutes. In the NFC right now, the best team is
Dude, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me.
know.
It's closer
I know
than
you're
you
sweating.
think. Oh, I am. And believe me, I've already gotten so much Eagles hate from everything that I'm saying, although I'm loving them up. But I got to say the Lions right now. I just think the Lions are battle tested. Before the last game, I didn't think the Eagles had played anyone. I don't count the Packers because it was the first game of the year. They hadn't had a good win. Now, this past game put the Eagles and the Lions on the same level in the NFC for me. So I got to go Lions, I think. What about you?
All right, Eagles moved to 10-2 after going 2-2.
They were 2-2 at
to
the bye.
start the season.
Yep.
They were
8-game win
2-2.
streak.
We were on the show talking
Crazy.
about what are they gonna do? This is not working. CEO Sirianni ain't it, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone settled in. The run game exploded. Saquon Barkley exploded. Jalen Hurts got comfortable. Everything is working and moving in the right direction for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just think this momentum that they have found is giving them the edge. The way they're winning, they're keeping it pretty simple, right? They're not they're not relying on Jalen to make these crazy wild plays, right? Like it's a simple. I don't want to take away from what they're doing. They're not hurting.
Simple's
themselves.
the right word. Simple's the right word, and I think you hit it spot on. Like if I had to make the case for the Eagles to be the team, I would say simplicity for Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, is what's driving this after the 2-2 start. You look at Jalen post-bye, they're 8-0, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception. You look at Saquon Barkley, he's on pace for 2,100 yards. He could set the record. He's an MVP. He's a literal MVP candidate, right? The one thing that I point to is, and it's not getting enough love, right? We're loving up the offense, is Vic Fangio's defense. They're number 2 in total scoring defense. They're number 1 in total defense. The DBs are balling, the young rookies. Jalen Carter is a beast. He's getting double teamed at a rate we haven't seen in a really long time. And I would say the duo between Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond are probably one of the best inside linebacker duos in all of football. So you get that on top of the run game, the number 1 total, the number 1 rushing offense in the league. You pair that with Jalen Hurts not making mistakes. I think that's the thing that I like. However, Diana, the only question I have about the Eagles and why I cannot put them on the Lions level is because of the quarterback. And it's really not a weakness per se, but I have not seen in this 8-game win streak Jalen Hurts really take over a game. At some point this year, whether it's later in the season or whether it's in the playoffs, can Jalen Hurts turn it up a notch to his 2022 level? I have yet to see it. He's got one of the best duos in the league, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but they're just not asking him to throw a lot. I think he's throwing the ball like 19 and a half times per game since the bye week. So it's going to be interesting to see, but that's why I have the Lions ahead as just a quarterback.
Yeah, I also just like what they're able to get out of the talent and this roster that we've talked about a lot on this show about Howie Roseman, the GM, putting together a championship roster. And you see where obviously their stars are shining with Saquon Barkley. You mentioned DeJean Mitchell, Mekhi Becton. I mean, Mekhi Becton in New York with the Jets.
Yeah, it's impressive.
No one could get anything out of him. And now Philly, Jeff Stoutland is getting the most out of him than we've seen. Zach Braun, 5th in the league in tackles, all making massive contributions and helping the Eagles. So we will see. And I want to quickly wrap up the NFC because I don't know the answer to this question. Do we believe in the Vikings? Do we?
Well, I don't know what you believe in, but I believe in the Vikings. Anytime you're 10-2, like you're legit, and it's at times looked not great, but I still come back to their defense getting takeaways at a rate. I think it's first in the NFL or second in the NFL in takeaways, and then in fourth quarters of games or third quarters of games when they've been losing or it's been close, my guy Sam Darnold's making plays. Like his pocket presence in the game this past week versus the Cardinals was exceptional. They were bringing all sorts of blitzes, and especially in the third and fourth quarter, something like sort of clicked in him. People are still doubting if he can play. Dude, they're 10-2. You've won 10 out of your 12 games. You're alive and well for a 1 seed, which is nuts to me, and you're doing it with a really good run game. Kevin O'Connell, they keep winning. He should be in the Coach of the Year conversation. There's a lot of good candidates out there. I get that. But I love what the Vikings have been putting on tape lately, and they're winning tight games. And that won't always be the case, but when teams do that, it sort of calluses you for these tight games that are going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and it's also a good point. Kevin O'Connell, Coach of the Year. We've talked about that on the show here, and I want to transition to the AFC. Speaking of Coach of the Year, I don't think enough of us are giving Sean McDermott credit for what he's doing.
Gosh.
I think we need to bring him into this conversation for Coach of the Year. The Bills clinched the AFC East,
which is crazy because they clinched it on December 1st. What was it, like the 5th straight? They clinched the division on December 1st. That's wild.
I know we have a whole month and a quarter to go of January to still play. Josh Allen, the first quarterback to ever record a rushing, receiving, and passing touchdown in the same game as they just
that was play of the year. Like, I know Saquon hurdled the dude backwards. I get it. That's going to win the S. This might be more impressive. Like, Josh Allen's like, just hand me the ball, Amari. Hand me the ball. It was insane.
Yeah, and you just look at the AFC East in general, too, comparing the Bills to everyone else, and it's almost a sad little story at this point. You know, I do like the Dolphins showing some fight
Jets.
here.
Oh.
You know, and then we know the Jets and the situation here with Rodgers remaining the starting quarterback because Jeff Ulbrich thinks that he gives this Jets team the best chance to win.
I mean, but does he? Does he? Like, at what point do the Jets say, and this is something that I've always been, like, not always been, but been wondering lately, at what point do you just shut them down for the year and be like, let's move on, let's figure out what we have in Tyrod Taylor, figure out what we have in the third string guy. I don't know. It's just, I actually hate to see Rodgers go out like this, but it's just, I can't imagine a world where he's back with the Jets or the Jets want him back next year, because this has been a complete disaster of an experience for Jets fans.
Yeah, and you know, I've talked about that on the show, and we've reported about it that this is headed to a divorce. This isn't going to stay together. So we'll see how the Jets decide to manage this for the next few weeks. And I'm going to guess that they're going to try to do it in a way.
He's also 41, though.
Suits everybody. Happy birthday, Aaron Rodgers. So hopefully for your next birthday, you'll be in a place where you're having more success and perhaps maybe a lot happier than you are now. To try to make sense of the San Francisco 49ers season, my dear friend Mike Silver. Mike, the 49ers have fallen, and they're not getting up. I don't know. I don't think they're getting up. I don't think there's anything that we can do to help them here. So we wanted you to join the show to give us a little breakdown of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and really what the vibes are for the 49ers after really a bizarre year for Kyle Shanahan and company. So first, just how are you doing, bud?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm definitely doing better than the 49ers. And, you know, the math is still out there because it's the NFC West. And if you look at Kyle Shanahan's history these last few years, they have gone on some improbable late season runs. But yeah, the eye test is telling us this is more like 2020, the last time they were coming off a Super Bowl defeat to the Chiefs. And everybody talks about Super Bowl hangover, but I started talking about bad vibes summer in July and August, but really, I think this goes back to you're Kyle Shanahan. You just basically shut down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs for most of the Super Bowl. You decide you want to fire Steve Wilks, your defensive coordinator, after one season. That's cool. You're in the big chair. We trust you, I guess, but it definitely looked scapegoatish, and I think Kyle knew that when he did it. And it was this whole, we're going to go back to basics. I'm going to get Nick Sorensen. We're going to run that wide 9 with the Seattle 3 behind it the way I like it. And so that was the start of it. You had the horribly drawn out contract disputes with Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams, which were avoidable. You had crazy stuff like Ricky Pearsall getting shot in broad daylight in San Francisco. Thankfully, he's okay. And you have obviously had a ton of injuries, but I would argue the vibes have been bad for a long time, and they're trying to summon something now, and it is not there at all.
Obviously, other than injuries, Mike, right? Like you can point to a litany of injuries that have ruined really Kyle Shanahan's season, the 49ers season. It's hard to win without your star players. I'm more focused on the defense, though, and you mentioned it in passing when you said that. So Steve Wilks fired as defensive coordinator last year. They were the number 5 total defense in all of football. Then Shanahan goes and hires his own guy, Nick Sorensen. It wasn't talked about a lot because we're like, oh, they just have a good defense, and it's just going to get swept under the rug. But I would point to that as probably the number one thing that I'm not going to let Kyle Shanahan slide on, because it was sort of, I didn't agree with it in the moment. What is the feel in the building? Can he survive this? I mean, what's happening on that aspect of it?
I mean, probably not, right? And I don't know that that's fair to Nick Sorensen, because what Kyle Shanahan really did was he said, I just want to go back to how we had it with D'Amico and Robert Saleh, but that flies in the face of everything Kyle Shanahan stands for on the offensive side. And yes, I will draw attention to my book, The Why Is Everything, which is out there, which is about how Kyle Shanahan and that whole crew of coaches that he was with in Washington, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Raheem Morris, Mike McDaniel, their whole thing is always innovate, always get ahead. And I think he does that on the offensive side at the highest level, but it's a weird thing to say, we just want to go back to our thing. And so, not to get too scheme heavy, because I clearly don't understand it on the level that you do, and let alone these coaches. But my understanding is you had the kind of classic Seattle 3 defense under Saleh in 2017 to 2018. A lot of people wanted him fired. And then they said, let's add the wide 9 front and combine it. And look, they had rookie Nick Bosa, healthy D Ford, DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead in their prime in the inside, and then Greenlaw and Warner young, chasing people around behind it. So yeah, it looked unbelievable. They went to the Super Bowl. But if your whole thing is always innovate, and the league is doing that constantly, it seems weird to me that you'd be like, let's just go back to our basic scheme with Nick Sorensen. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we saw with the Eagles a year ago what happens when you have an organization that thinks it has a lot of talent with high standards and a recent history of success, and it goes off the rails. Nick Sirianni was lucky to keep his job, and he got 2 new coordinators shoved down his throat, and it's worked out better. But yeah, I mean, special teams, again, you have Brian Schneider, who was a great special teams coordinator for Pete Carroll for years, a coach who values special teams, who told me that was a way for us to express our identity and who we are. Now he's with Kyle Shanahan, a coach who has literally said publicly, my philosophy on special teams is just don't screw it up so we can win it on offense and defense, and has said things like, we don't fake punts because that's what teams do that need to steal a possession. Basically, like, that's gimmick crap for the, low life teams. And so if that's your special teams philosophy, it'll get blamed on the special teams coach. But that, again, is something you could point to the head coach when you're assessing.
Well, I'm glad you brought up just the way Kyle Shanahan is viewing all of this top to bottom, because, you see a lot of fans frustrated about the way this season has gone, and you have people going, well, maybe this will be it for Kyle Shanahan. Maybe the front office, maybe the owner is going to say this isn't good enough. We're not getting there. What's your take when you start hearing people bring an argument up that Kyle Shanahan should be fired?
Look, Jed York fired Jim Harbaugh after 4 incredibly successful years, 3 NFC Championship game appearances, a near Super Bowl victory, and it was trending downward that 4th year, and it was getting weird, and it was not a pleasant workplace environment for the owner. So I understood why Jed York made that move. But if you make that move and then you trot out Jim Tomsula and get up on the podium and say, it's going to be like Steve Kerr. Now, I take that one personally, as you know, because that's my boy from growing up. But narrator's voice, it was not like Steve Kerr. It was like me trying to guard Steve Kerr on the youth playground, right? It was bad. So, I think after that, and then Chip Kelly for a year, Kyle was like, Jed was like, I'm going to find a coach and I'm going to support him and stick with him. And he was so good, Jed, after 2017 and 2018 did not go well with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch about, you know what, we're doing this for the long haul. We're staying the course. And year 3, he was rewarded and nearly won a championship. And it's been really, really good. So I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going anywhere, nor do I think he should. Coaches do get in situations where teams get tired. This team has been through a lot emotionally, a lot of near misses. They have a lot of older players or players who have a lot of wear and tear, who are proud and decorated and have been through a lot together. Kyle is a coach who wants things done on his terms, within a game, within a season, the way things play out. And when things do play out on his terms, it usually goes great. And when they don't, it sometimes takes them a while to adjust. There's also something going on, teams age out. The injuries have been brutal, and that happened to them in 2020. There's also something else going on. And Chase, I kind of want to ask you about this, because I have found, as a media person, over the last 3+ decades, the hardest thing for me to understand when I'm trying to predict how a team's going to do in a given season is that internal chemistry. Because football, I think, is different. It's not like chemistry matters to me so much because you're asking your arm to bend back, at a 270-degree angle and all sorts of irrational things to be great together. And there has to be a driving force of togetherness that propels you. And that's hard to quantify year to year. And so more about that, obviously, haven't been in so many locker rooms and haven't been a part of so many teams. Something has seemed off to me, and I've struggled in ways to express it since the spring, really. But the vibes don't seem right. And I want to attack that a little more as a journalist, but it doesn't seem like that is the same to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you have a bunch of star players that are hurt in and out of the huddle, in and out of the offense, in and out of the defense, the team, you're constantly like shuffling guys in and out that maybe they haven't been in that certain position, like leadership position, right? Fred Warner just came out and said he's playing on a fractured ankle. Like, what? Yeah. Like, are you kidding me? Like, stuff like that. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I think the Ricky Pearsall getting shot was crazy, right? And then obviously the contract disputes between Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk have a lot to do with that, especially because those are the two leaders, like the leaders on offense. So I think it's a lot to do with that. And to Diana's point, I think it's idiotic if Kyle Shanahan's on the hot seat. Like when I look at coaching and who's going to be up next in their interviews or who's going to get fired, like who are they going to replace them with? Right? Like, and that's what teams look to. Like, who's better right now out there than Kyle Shanahan? And quite honestly, I can't tell you. Anyway.
I will pause you and say Jim Tomsula is available, to my knowledge, if they want to go back.
We do not want to go back. I'm sure 49ers fans do not want to go back. I have a question about the quarterback.
He's a great guy,
Brock
Get
Purdy.
Tomsula that.
Yeah.
So Brock Purdy's up for an extension this offseason. How do you think this year playing out for him, has it affected his leverage? Like, is he still viewed as the guy that's going to get potentially $60 million in that locker room by, Lynch, by Shanahan?
Yeah, I would say yes. And I think Kyle decided that long ago. Like, Christmas 2 years ago, honestly,
Oh,
when he
wow.
was thrown in. But, so we're presuming that Kyle Shanahan will be back, which unless he doesn't want
Yes.
to be, I would assume is we all agree. I think they've decided Brock Purdy's that guy, but this is a new world, right? And so instead of having this collection of highly paid in their prime all-stars and a quarterback on the cheapest rookie deal ever, you're going to have, whether it's 60 or not, I don't know. I would just urge the 49ers, based on recent history, figure it out and do it quick. Like, do it early. Don't make this a thing that drags out based on how that's affected them. But yeah, I think Purdy will be reasonable. I think they'll come up with a number, and I think they'll pay him. So the issue is, and we knew this was coming, and that's why I also talked about Last Dance in relation to this season. Some of these guys are not going to be there because of the economics of what I just enunciated, and some of them are just aging out. And football's brutal, and it happens fast, and it's not always chronological age. Like, is Deebo Samuel declining as a player, even though he's pretty young? I don't know, man. He's taken a lot. The way he plays, he's taken a pounding. That's possible. Is George Kittle, who's been so good, is he in his prime? Is he descending? Same thing. Not old, but has taken a lot of hits because of the way he plays. Kyle Juszczyk, they may take a pay cut after last year. Hargrave, who's on IR, is old. Ayuk, they paid. He's coming off an ACL. Trent Williams, they paid, but he's pretty old. Warner and Greenlaw, who they hope to get back, who's such a big part of their identity, whose contract is up. They're not old, but they play so physically, and Greenlaw's a little undersized. Hufanga is basically, probably gone because he's so beat up at a young age. It's going to be a different thing.
Yeah,
and Brock Purdy's going to be asked to do more, and his game is to not try to do more. The whole beauty of Brock Purdy is like, I'm not trying to do the Josh Allen stuff. That would be stupid. I'll move and I'll extend plays, but I'm doing what Kyle's offense dictates, and that's why one reason why Kyle loves him so much. And he's great. I think Brock Purdy's mentality, skill, I think he's awesome. But the whole key with him is don't try to be Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. That's not you. And so he's going to have to thread that needle of not doing that, but also being a guy who makes so much money that you kind of have to be really, really good for them to win.
Well, I can almost guarantee that this offseason, as much as we'll be focused on what this deal will look like, what the numbers will come to for Brock Purdy in terms of his contract extension, I can't wait to just hear from the 49ers about what it was really like this year. Because, from the outside, we're all saying bad vibes. You're obviously around the team tons. You've been around them. But once this year wraps up and they can exhale and go, okay, yeah, that was one of the hardest years. And they're already starting to say it. Like, you're hearing some whispers, and even in the post-game locker rooms, you can just see it in their faces. Like, this thing is not going well this year. But the team where it seems things are going really well and really smooth are the Detroit Lions. And you recently did this all-access piece with Jared Goff out in Detroit, where you went to his home, you spent hours with him, you spent a day with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, Jared Goff's wife as well. You were all Detroit for it appears to be 48 hours, and the stories that you found.
I would also like to note that I then went over to Ann Arbor. I had a great dinner with Wink Martindale and another Michigan assistant. And one of the things at that dinner that I did is I instilled a belief in him and a game plan specific belief that he could shock the world and beat Ohio State. So, I love my Golden Bears, but you're welcome, Michigan fans. Yeah. I did that. That was my scheme. Okay, maybe not.
I was thinking about that when I was watching that game. I'm like, man, Wink is calling a great game right now. And thank God Mike Silver gave him all of his knowledge that he's learned over his years of covering the NFL.
Wait, hold on. I think I'll reveal it because it's Scoop City. Here's what I said. See ball, get ball. See ball, get ball.
You have all the answers, Mike. So Jared Goff, he gave you some tremendous insight into what this journey has been. I feel like I've heard a lot of different Jared Goff stories over the years. And, this, quite frankly, nothing's ever really been that interesting to me about his journey. I looked at it from the outside, and as someone covering the league is just, he was traded, the Rams kind of gave up on him, and now he's succeeding. There is so much more to Jared Goff, and your story truly revealed that with some of the things that he said to you. From the time you spent with him, and obviously you have a great relationship with him, what did you learn from that time that you spent about specifically why Jared Goff is at his best right now?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind. And listen, I've known him a long time, and I've known that one of his defining characteristics is he handles adversity really, really well. And most number one overall picks don't go through the kind of on-field stuff that he went through in college. Like he was 1-11 his freshman year and got yanked out of a game at Oregon because he couldn't throw in the rain. And he was getting, I won't even bore you, it's Cal stuff. But I always joke with him that he handled it way better than I did as an alum, because I melt down when things go bad for my alma mater, which unfortunately I have a lot of practice with. But, I've always known that he's really good about fighting through adversity, but this was different. And I remember going to his house in California a week before the Rams Super Bowl against the Bengals. And I wrote about it, but it was like, okay, dude, here you are. You got farmed out to Detroit. The whole world thinks, you're not good enough for Sean McVay. And now your replacement's going to the Super Bowl. You were 3-13-1, and this has got to be pretty hard. And he was pretty honest about it and said, yeah, I'm going to Cabo. I'm not sticking around for the game. And but he also said, this is Matthew's journey, and I'm happy for him, but my journey's still yet to be written. And and he even mentioned Ben Johnson, who I don't even think he'd officially been named the coordinator yet, but he was like, maybe my journey with Ben Johnson is going to lead to something really cool. So I remember that, but I guess it just, knowing him as well as I do, it never really hit me just what that was like day to day to go through that first year, and then that second year when they knew they were better, but they started 1-6, and he talked about I think they dropped to 1-5 and lost to Dallas really badly on the road, and he talked about walking in to meet with Dan Campbell on the Monday or Tuesday and thinking to himself, this is definitely, this could be it. Dan Campbell may say to me, look, man, we traded for you, we love you, but we're 4-18-1, and I'm going to make a change. And the fact that Dan stuck with him, I think, is so touching to him, and is part of that fabric of that team and their, how he changed that culture just by being resolute. But also Jared in that meeting kind of had an epiphany and just said, look, I'm gripping it so hard. I just got to do my job. And I got to stop trying to turn it around with a big play and I'm not to be, not like I'm checking out, but like, Dan, I'm just going to go through my reads and do my assignment. And Dan looks at him and says, that's all I've ever wanted from you, literally. And, and it gets better after that. So it's a really cool story. Really happy for him. It's great for the people in Detroit. And I've kind of taken, poke fun at Dan Campbell a lot since that opening press conference and, going for 2 to win a game from the 7 and then the 3.5 and the emotion. But look, I got to tell you, like being in that building, and I was there shortly after Dan got the job, and seeing it now, like you got to give him and Brad Holmes, the GM, and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and those players and the owner, Sheila Ford Hamp, you got to give them a lot of credit.
Spending time with them, specifically Jared Goff, what do you think? Can you put your finger on it? Because I can't, and since you spend a lot of time with him, I'm guessing you can. Why the success for him personally? Because he had success in LA at times, And some could argue Sean McVay at that time was elite of elite play callers. So people would be like, oh, he's just, a product of a system. But then he goes to this system, and I think he's playing MVP type level ball right now, playing some of the best ball. Like, why can you pinpoint the point that it just like clicked? Was it that meeting with Campbell? Like, what was it?
Well, first of all, I would argue that he was really good in 2018. Like, that crazy game against the Vikings, the game against the Chiefs. I think
the Chiefs game was nuts.
Yeah, nuts. And then I'll never forget being in New Orleans for that 2018 NFC Championship game. And by the way, Dan Campbell didn't forget it either. He was on the Saints sideline. But let me just talk about something I revere even more than Jared Goff for a second myself. This is a crazy story. I don't think I've told this much publicly, but Dianna
scoops it.
So the day after the Rams won their divisional round game, I went to Jared Goff's house and watched the games the next day with his good friends and his dad, just sitting around. Jared wasn't drinking beers, but I was, obviously. And, just watching ball. And it became apparent that day that the Saints were going to be the opponent. And I started talking about the crowd noise there were other players there too. And I said, God, you guys are going back into that. And they were all like, you know what? It wasn't that loud there. Like, we knew it would be loud, but like, it didn't freak us out. They had played in the regular season. So I had to show the aftermath on NFL Network. And the next day I went on that show, and in my conversation, I kind of related that and realizing that, they're probably taunting the crowd in New Orleans. So sure enough, the Saints go down and score to start the game. There's a kickoff and a timeout. On the scoreboard at the Superdome, they play the clip. And it's basically me inciting a riot. And I am getting texts from his friends and family members like, what the hell did you do? And I can't figure out what's going to be worse for me. Like, if the Saints win, all the Ram people are going to hate me forever. But if the Rams win, everyone in New Orleans is going to see me on the streets and not be pleased. And so all of a sudden it's 13-0. It's loud. He's got to wear a different helmet because the sound's not working. He's got to tape the ear holes. He's running down to the receivers before every play to tell them to play. It's really, really adverse conditions. And to see him bring them back and win in overtime, and I know there was also the no call that was horrific, but he did epic things in that game. And then he had a terrible Super Bowl, as did Sean. And so that's a long way of saying he was really good before, but he did lose confidence as it got bad with Sean. And I don't think we can underestimate how big a deal it is. You're not just discarded by your old team. You're not just discarded by your old team and the guy they bring in to replace you wins the Super Bowl. You're discarded by the coach who is considered the brainiac wonderkind of football. And so everybody thinks you just suck. Like, how could you not? Sean McVay was like, I'm done with you. You're not good enough. And by the way, the guy I'm bringing in is good enough. He won the Super Bowl. So it wasn't just media people or fans here and there going, he's not good. Everybody just assumed that because Sean said he was bad, essentially, that he was bad. So, yeah, he's playing better. And, yeah, that meeting helped. And, yeah, that offensive line's incredible. And, yeah, he was good before. But I just think it took him a long time to work through that trauma, honestly.
What a great life lesson, too, in general, right? Like, to your point about Sean McVay, everyone just assumed that Jared Goff stunk because of how much credibility Sean has in this league. It's an awesome story. It's impossible not to root for Jared Goff.
Oh, totally.
Before we let you go, we've got this coaching cycle coming up here in just a few weeks. You and I have been working the phones trying to find out, what these teams are looking for, and we both have discovered that Ben Johnson is a top dog here in the search. And we know that he's had opportunities in the past. We thought he'd wind up in Washington. That did not happen. He decided to go back to Detroit. From being around the Lions, did you learn anything about Ben Johnson and perhaps maybe what he wants next for himself?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great conversation with him. I didn't know him very well, and he's fascinating. He's not really from a tree. I wrote a whole book about this Mike Shanahan tree. He says he's a mutt. He dabbles from a lot of different influences. And what's really cool is when I asked him about his offensive philosophy, the first thing he said was, well, I serve at the pleasure of the head coach, kind of like I say I serve at the pleasure of my president, Dianna Russini. And he said, the first thing is, what's the head coach's philosophy? And that's how I did it. And then he said, the second thing is, what does Jared do well? And let's, make that the offense. So that's really a cool way to approach it. But I would say this about Ben Johnson. People thought he'd go to Carolina. He didn't take that. People thought he'd take that Washington job. He didn't. I think he doesn't like the presumption that he's doing something. He doesn't like he doesn't like during the season it being talked about, or let alone him being contacted. He just wants to coach and try to help the Lions win. And obviously you have to deal with it after the regular season if you're in the cycle. But he doesn't, he wants to be where he is. And he said something really cool to me, which is like, I was an assistant in Miami for years and years. I was an assistant here under Matt Patricia. Like, I haven't really had very many winning seasons, if any, in this league until now. And like, I'm learning. I want to experience what that is. And I'm learning from Dan Campbell. Okay, now you have high expectations and you won a lot last year. How do you approach 2024? He's like, I'm taking notes and learning that. It's helping me as a coach. So I guess the last thing I'd say on Ben Johnson is, yeah, he's a really qualified candidate based on what he's done. I do think he's going to be a good head coach when he decides to do it, but I wouldn't assume anything when it comes to him unless you see him or hear him say it. And, because we are who we are, Dianna.
Someone's going to pay a lot of money.
Yeah, we'll hear it and we'll see it because that's kind of how we do it.
I just love the idea that he knows that he doesn't know all, right? To me, now he's even more attractive to me in terms of becoming a head coach because he doesn't have all the answers and he's trying to learn them. And in a league right now where we are constantly trying to figure out why coaches are not having success with their quarterbacks, and the simple idea of just give them what they are good at seems basic to us, and yet we still see teams make this mistake. So his answer to your question about his philosophy is fantastic. So we'll see how this thing shakes out. We'll see which teams are going to go after him. Once we see how far the Detroit Lions go. But either way, though, Mike, thanks so much for hanging out with us here on Scoop City. It's your second visit, right? This is Scoop City visit too?
It is my second visit, and they still haven't revoked my Scoop City passport. So I feel like
Diana's the president, so don't make her mad.
Oh, trust me, I know. I feel like sometimes I'm Secret Service and proud to be one.
Mike's had to deal with a lot of my enemies in the past. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you later. Thanks so much.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, Chase, I know we're still full from a weekend of nonstop eating. By the way, way too much food.
Did you eat a lot of food?
I had so much Chinese food this weekend. How gross is that?
Why?
I was so over Thanksgiving and that food. I went in the other direction.
What was the favorite thing on your plate?
From Thanksgiving?
No, on the Chinese food plate. Yeah, on Thanksgiving.
I was going to say the dumplings.
That's good though. That's good.
They're really good. I'd say the stuffing. My father-in-law made a really good homemade stuffing that
mine was.
Has been in the family for years.
The homemade stuffing. Oh,
yeah.
Come on now.
See,
if
you ask me
awesome.
to pick though, like the stuffing that you get in the box at the store versus like the homemade.
Do not say that. I'm going to just cut you off. Don't say it. Mine was the sweet potato casserole. Sweet potato casserole. My wife makes. Have you been to Ruth Chris? Do they have Ruth Chris on the East Coast?
They do.
Okay, so Ruth Chris has I think they have one of the most amazing steaks. It comes out sizzling like 800 degrees, right, in butter.
The best.
But they have this sweet potato casserole that they have there that's literally like candy. It's got this candied crust with almonds and nuts and brown sugar on top, baked on top. My wife pretty much stole the recipe and made it sort of her own over the years. She made the most amazing sweet potato casserole. That's just like, I mean, it's like sugar, but it was so good.
Oh, that's awesome. Gosh. Wait, so you guys break your little organic rules and your strict food regimen on Thanksgiving?
It was pretty organic. I mean,
it's pretty organic. It was pretty healthy.
It was pretty good. I mean, I wasn't healthy because I ate, like, sweets is my biggest issue post playing life, and I can't really eat like I used to because I'm not working out as much. So I try to stay away from the sweets, but it was so good. Oh my gosh.
I do think it's funny how after Thanksgiving, I think most people just tend to go completely in a different direction for dinners like the next few days, right? Like I don't want to look at any of that type of food for a very long time. I am ready for just a nice light salad. I do not want to eat heavy for a while because it is tough going after a few days like that.
I could take an Uncrustable though. I'd crush an Uncrustable.
You know what? That actually sounds like a great dinner. My first Uncrustable goes out to Bryce Young. I mean,
let's go on the bandwagon too. I gave him some love earlier.
We have been on the Bryce Young train, and I think a lot of people in the NFL are right now, knowing the story, knowing how this has been such a strange dynamic there, from being benched after 2 games to having this new head coach who, has been trying to figure out how to make this work. And now you are seeing just situations and decision-making and plays that I wasn't sure he had in him, and he does. So Bryce Young, how about you? Just sticking in there once again. They didn't get the win, but does Carolina even trade him now?
I love it.
They don't do that.
No, they can't. Yeah, I think he's going to be the starter in 25.
I really hope this continues to work and work out for the Carolina Panthers. All right, your turn.
Would you say I'm probably or at least one of the most positive people you know? Okay.
I love to text you things that I'm upset about, and you immediately disagree with me. You disagree with my attitude. You disagree with my negative take, and you spin it, and you make me believe that I could be like the goddess of the world.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm glad you provided context to our listeners and viewers, because I'm going negative. I'm taking away 2 Uncrustables. The first one, and you can go, I don't want to give 2 in a row, but the first one, Justin Tucker. We talked about him at the beginning of the show, and it's hard to see. You know what? The reason I'm taking away from him is he's missed a lot of kicks, right? He's missed 8 or 9 kicks through the year. But if they would have made their kicks against Philly, they probably would have won the game. I think 7 to 9 points were left off the board. They're going to need him down the stretch. So I need him in tip-top shape. So I'm going to take an Uncrustable away. He doesn't need to be eating that. He needs to get back on it. And the second you make a game-winning kick, bro, I'm giving you 10. But I got to take it back. And it's always hard when you see a future Hall of Famer struggle and go through it. And I wish it upon nobody. It's hard on everyone watching you. I can't imagine what you're going through, but unfortunately, you're getting it taken away from you.
I'd also like to take an Uncrustable away from me for saying Justin Tuck every time. I don't mean to. The names are too close. It just slips my mind. I'm like, Justin Tuck. Grr. I have to it's like a delayed. He's earned over the years to be called the right name. But yeah, I think that situation's really hard. All of it's complicated, right? Because I still believe he'll come up in the big games. But
totally.
I think lately it just lately it just hasn't been great. So you got to wonder, do they sign a guy to the practice squad? How are they going to manage this? How are they going to handle this?
And Harbaugh's a special teams coach too, so he's in on it.
Correct. All right, I want to give an Uncrustable, a big one, to Leonard Williams. All right, so Leonard Williams' revenge game on his old Jets team, calling Rodgers old and washed. That's not why I'm giving him the Uncrustable. But it was just this MetLife of haunting ghosts, right? Leonard Williams was on the Jets, then he was on the Giants. Joe Shane traded him to the Seahawks. Then he comes back and plays for the Seahawks against the New York Jets, picks off Aaron Rodgers, runs back, just all of it. So Big Cat, big Uncrustable to you for all your efforts there. Running more than you've ever done. I know. Well, so you know how I have this weird habit of obsessing over players' workouts. I watch all their workouts all the time when they post them. Leonard does not do that. Leo is a experienced life kind of person. He's adventurous. He loves to go on safaris and deep water fishing and hiking. He's always doing something in nature.
That's cool.
And he appreciates it. I wonder if any of that has anything to do with some of the talent that he has. But anytime I see Leonard Williams doing well, I always just think this guy like went swimming with sharks once. He likes to keep it adventurous. What about you?
I'm taking away an Uncrustable from the weather of San Diego. And that you're like, wait, what? Like,
You live in heaven.
You
literally live in heaven.
So on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we worked a double shift at Fox, and I've told you this, but the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is the most traveled day of the year. And so I'm up in LA. I got to get back to San Diego. We have a dinner at 7 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. with a bunch of family that we're hosting for Thanksgiving the next day, a bunch of my wife's family. So I book a flight instead of driving like I normally do, because people that have done that drive before said it could take up to 4 hours. It usually takes me 2. It could be double that time. If I would have left then, I would have missed dinner. I would have been home at 8. I was just so ready to get home. I had left my house that day at 3 a.m. to drive up to Fox. Okay. So I'm like, I'll have this smart idea of booking a flight. And so I'm worried the entire day, because we're filming the Thursday show on Wednesday night. So we get done Wednesday with the show, and I'm freaking out the entire show. My answers were just so fast, like thinking I could get the show over. I'm like, the show's the show. Like, what am I talking about? Like, it's going to end when it ends. Like, I'm an idiot. And I finished a show at 3:48 p.m. I have a 5:05 flight out of LAX. Mind you, I'm in Beverly Hills-ish area, Century City area, and I have to get down to LAX. Usually what should be a 20-minute drive takes me 45 minutes. So I could be off in a little math, but I know for a fact I get at the airport at 4:37 p.m. for a 5:05 flight. I'm freaking out. I don't have any bags to check. I'm running through the airport. I run through TSA. I have pre-check, so I'm good, but I'm still like running to the gate. I get to the gate at like 4:51, and they haven't closed the gate yet. I'm like, the full-on sweat drenched. I rarely run.
There
right,
is
to
no
the airport.
cardio beatdown like an airport run, right? What is
and
that?
It just like kept going and going, and I'm like, am I going to get to this gate? Anyway, get to the gate. I'm sitting there, and I'm like working it on my phone. I'm going to get home at 5:35. Holy cow! Like, it's just like an up and down flight. 5:45, and I'm sitting on it, and it's 5:10, 5:15, 5:18, and all of a sudden we're like, oh hey, the weather in San Diego is causing a delay. We're going to be delayed 30 minutes.
Wait, like, what was the weather?
It was like really foggy by the airport. It was a little bit misty. I'm like, come on, it's just fog. Like, we can land. Like, come on. And the airport by San Diego is like right by the beach. And then my mom's a flight attendant, has been for 40 years. So I sort of know when the flight attendants and captains are talking like something's bad's happening. So I like go up there and I'm like, hey, are we going to get out? They're like, no, we're not getting out. I'm like, wait, we're not getting out? They're like, no, but like technically we can't really say it yet because like FAA. I'm like, oh my God. So I grab my stuff. The flight gets canceled. I go and get an Uber, and then I'm in more 3 hours of traffic. I barely get there in dinner. So it was just a pain. It's a long story, but I had to say it.
It was a long story, but everyone listening, and including myself, we've been in those situations where you want to rip your hair out, where you've running through the airport. Here's the part that crushes me for you. You made it. Like you made it, you were and I was worried all day. I know. I would have been sick over that. Sick.
It was bad.
I'm so sorry.
And then I get in an Uber, and it's extremely expensive from LA. The Uber smells like the inside of a cigar bar the entire time. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
That black cloud is just over you all day long, and there's just nothing you can do. We've all taken those L's. My final one, I'm gonna give an Uncrustable to Chuck E. Cheese. Okay, yes, they still exist.
I love Chuck E. Cheese.
I had never been to one. I decided my kids.
What?
I'd never been to one. We were like, I don't know if we were not allowed to go, or I don't know. I just had never been there. So we took my boys with their cousins the day after Thanksgiving. As soon as the Chuck E. Cheese opened, we figured, we'll let them run around, burn the energy, and they'll be down for their naps, and we could enjoy a nice Friday hanging out. Well, Matt Eberflus gets fired while I'm at Chuck E. Cheese. So Chucky, that's his, yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's his name, right? The mouse, the rat. What is he? Is he a mouse? He's a mouse, right?
Call him a rat.
I'm like sitting in the corner on the phone, writing and tweeting and texting, and he's trying to give me a high five, like being so nice, and I'm like, I got no time for this. So, my husband took video of the kids just jumping up and down, and there I was in the corner, acting like I was all better than it. So I'm not better than Chuck E. Cheese. I love Chuck E. Cheese. But when news breaks,
you sent a video of your kids, and they looked like they were having a grand old time.
They had a blast, and I will say all my nieces and nephews, they were my shadows on Friday trying to write that Chicago Bears story. They all want to be reporters now. They all just sat around with their coloring books and just pretended to write stories about the Chicago Bears in an Eagles household. So I was impressed with their openness to getting the story. So either way, that was awesome. Great holiday weekend for, it sounds like, everybody, unless you were Chase. Hopefully the next few weeks your travel problems will be relieved. I have technology problems, you have travel problems. Together we're a disaster, my friend.
Yes,
all right, that'll do it for us here on Scoop City. We'll do it again. All right, that'll do it for us here on Scoop City. We will see you guys in a few days.
Bye, guys. Tag me next time.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.